record. There you are, off you go.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Leah. It was such a great introduction. So welcome, everybody. I know we're short a few people today. That's okay. Maybe they'll join, as Leah was saying. And we also, if the recording works out, we hope to share this and we'll make it available via a link or maybe on our YouTube channel. Welcome to the first session online. We decided to go online. It just makes it a little bit more, I suppose, open and easy for people to access and to share later. So today we want to talk about cryptic wood white and the other white, some of the other white species. We're not going to talk about brimstone and a couple of others, and then identification and monitoring. So my name is Rose Cremin and I am the Conservation Manager in Northern Ireland for butterfly conservation. I've been working with BC now for 8 years in various different roles. So I've landed in the Conservation Directorate probably the last 6 years, which has been fantastic. So focusing really on our priority landscapes and species. And before I move on, I just want to say thank you very much as well to our funders. So to DAERA and the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, who've been funding us for many years now, well over a decade. So funding our core work and also our engagement work. And I also want to thank the Department for Communities and the Heritage Fund, which funds some of Leah's work, and she's also funded by NIEA. So thank you for that crucial funding to allow us to do our work. So I'm just going to start off with a little bit of an introduction to butterfly conservation, not too much really, but just for those of you who may not know too much about us, we are the UK charity with a focus on butterflies, moths and nature. Butterfly Conservation developed a new strategy which runs 2021 to 2026, and really it's been really useful for staff. It focuses our attention on 3 goals, so goal 1, 2 and 3. So the Conservation Directorate that me and Leah work in are very much involved with looking at threatened butterflies and moth species, and also looking to improve the condition of some of our most important landscapes for butterflies and moths in Northern Ireland. And Rosie Irwin, who is our Senior Engagement Officer in Northern Ireland, she's on maternity leave at the moment. One of her big focuses is Goal 3, which is all about wild spaces. So creating wild spaces for pollinators, butterflies and moths as well, of course, in your gardens and in your communities. So this workshop today sort of fits in really with Goal 1, which is halving the number of UK's threatened butterflies and moths, because cryptic wood white is one of our top priority species in butterfly conservation. And just in terms of what tools that we use to, let's say, assess what's threatened or not, and what stage they're at, we're going to be using, or we have been using, a species recovery curve. And I've got a really nice picture there of marsh artillery. So that's an example of a species where we really have done an awful lot of work in the last number of decades on the beginning elements really of a species and deciding where it sits on the species recovery curve. So a status assessment, looking to see where the distribution of the species is and how they're doing, a diagnosis of what needs to be done, solution testing, which could be research and also projects, and then recovery management. So many of you will know that BC have been involved in landscape scale recovery projects for marsh artillery through the Cooperation Across Borders for Biodiversity, the Interreg project. So that's delivering capital works with some key landowners and managers in our priority landscapes. So this is an approach that we want to be using for all our threatened species really over the next coming years. So surveying and monitoring and recording schemes. So we do run a number of workshops over the season, and we have done in the past, looking at surveying and monitoring and recording schemes. We're talking about cryptic wood white today and the other whites. And at the moment, what we're going to suggest for those species is actually we don't really need any more transects for them per se, but that depends on where you live as well. So as many of you will understand and appreciate, a lot of our transects and recorders live, it's where the population are based really in the east of the country. So really, while I say that we don't really need any more, let's say, all species transects to pick up on these species we're going to be talking about, if you do live in, let's say, counties Tyrone or Fermanagh, we might like to talk to you because they're very much under-recorded. So just very briefly, sort of like the bread and butter of what makes a record, and what is a record. So really a record, a species record is, it's got a number of sort of elements to it. So it's your name, right? So what your name is, what date you recorded the species on, was it today? Where was it? What species was it, and how many did you see? And essentially that is a biological record. Now, in the past, decades ago, this may have often sat in people's notebooks and in their minds and their memories, and they would share that. But really, we've moved on significantly from that in the last 20 years, last 10 years, and then we continue to get better at it. But really what we need is your data to be digitized and to be submitted electronically, either shared with us, we can take it down for you and pass it on, or ideally actually that you would submit the data yourself. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. And this is really important for today as well, because what we really want you to do is not only be able to identify some of the white species that we have in the country, but also to share your data with us. So that's really key. So all countries in the UK, England, Wales, Scotland, and actually some of them have several record centres. We just have one in Northern Ireland, and it's called CEDAR, the Centre for Environmental Data and Recording. They gather biological data, and then ultimately it ends up with us if it's butterflies and moths, or also what we all use as well as iRecord. So this is the app that we're going to be recommending that you use today, and it's an app that a lot of the ENGOs support as well. So you can submit like plant records or bird records or mammal records, any insects as well, and invertebrates to iRecord. And essentially iRecord is a desktop app, or you can download it on your phone as well, which is really handy when you're out in the field. If you allow it to use your location, it'll pin where you are. So it saves you sort of looking at Irish Good Reference Finder and pinning your location that way. So we really recommend that going forward, that you use iRecord. So there's that. We're not going to talk about it so much today, but if you're really interested in the UK Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, UK BMS, this is really where we ask recorders and volunteers to share their transit data. You set it up there, there's lots of guidance, there's information, you share your data there, and it gets logged into the UK BMS, that whole system. And I'll be talking about that a bit more maybe during the Dingy Skipper talk, and also the Marsh Artillery, not the Marsh Artillery, sorry, the Artilleries talk later. Okay, so really I've highlighted in red there what we're going to be talking about today that we'd love from you would be casual records from really under-recorded areas, particularly Derry, Londonderry, Fermanagh and Tyrone. However, if you live in County Down, Armagh and Antrim, please do keep recording and submitting your data. It's really important. There's also other ways you can include your data outside transects. Me and Leah were chatting about the garden butterfly monitoring or garden butterfly scheme, so you could register your garden and count butterflies that way. And we also have the big butterfly count, which is coming up late in the summer, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. What we're not going to be talking about today is moth recording, and you know, while our name is Butterfly Conservation, we're also very much concerned and interested in moth recording. So we won't be chatting about that today, but that sits there in the background as well. We have a list of priority moth species as well as butterfly species. So just to show as well, just a little bit, these are two maps. So one is showing the distribution of UK BMS transects across Britain and Ireland, not Britain and Ireland, the UK. So Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England. So it's fascinating to see the distribution. And the other map, the heat map, is showing really the density of casual records. So it's really interesting to see where the gaps are perhaps, and the level of effort that goes into recording. And this is, I'm going to fly through these two actually. The next two slides are just showing basically some information that you can download from the UK Butterfly Monitoring Scheme if you're interested in finding out more after today. So, and you don't need a username or login. You can just freely go on, log on, and not log on, sorry, log in, I guess, or open it up. There's field guidance notes and forms, various different guidance forms for setting up a transect. So really useful and informative. Just a little bit as well about if you were going to set up a transit, but actually just in general as well for recording. There are weather conditions that really you do need to be thinking about that you want to meet. So me and Leah talk about these all the time, you know, what's the weather like? We're always looking out the window and looking for either some warm temperature or the sun to be shining. So really butterflies are really active when it's 13 degrees and sunny, or if it's not sunny, it really needs to be 16, 17 degrees plus, okay? And generally the best time to go out and look for butterflies would be between 10 a.m. and 4:30 during the day, right? Earlier, unless it's, you know, there's a heat wave, which we do get if it's been very warm for consecutive days, and oftentimes in the morning it can start off at 15, 16 degrees, but generally that is the time, 10 a.m. to 4:30. And obviously no rain, that's fairly obvious. And wind as well. If it's starting to, you know, get quite windy where trees are swaying quite a lot or violently, then definitely not a time to go out and survey for butterflies. I'm not going to talk about the polar box. That's really applicable if you're going to walk a transect, but the idea is you're walking this 5-meter box and you go forward. But if you're just looking at casual records, that's as much as you need to know, okay? And I just wanted to share this as well. So for all the people that do walk transects, but also actually anyone that submits casual records, this is the summary from the UK Butterfly Monitoring Scheme. And basically it's a summary of the table from last year's results. So you can see up there at the top, cryptic wood white, orange tip, large white, small white, and green veined white, the species we're going to talk about today, how they're faring. So in general, we would say since 1970, species have declined, butterfly species, by 80%. So it's a real concern and it's a real issue. But what we do need is people to continue to submit their records and their data so we can track these changes, okay, and help to make differences like in wild spaces or with our programs. So for example, cryptic wood white was down 47% last year, and really interestingly and worryingly, green veined white by 59%. So please continue to submit your data or to learn how to ID. Right, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of why you're here today. You're probably, you know, that's exactly what you want to be learning about, isn't it? Is the white. So this is a list of species that we have across the island of Ireland. Okay, I've sort of split them up into wider countryside species. So these are species you'll get out in the wider countryside. They're not specialists, so they're not fussy that they have a single food plant like marsh artillery needs devil's bit scabious, or large heath needs bog cotton. So you know, the species on the wider countryside, you will find them pretty much everywhere. Specialists are specialists. They tend to be found in particular habitats, and they have a particular food plant. And by food plant, we mean that the female will lay her eggs on just one plant, and that's what she needs, and that's what the caterpillars need when they hatch out from the eggs. Okay, so that's important to understand. And then the Republic of Ireland also has a few additional species that we don't have in Northern Ireland, and we're not going to be looking at those, but that would be the wood white, which you can find in the burn, the pearl border fritillary, brown hair streak, and gatekeeper. So some of these we may find, you know, the gatekeeper in particular in years and decades to come. Perhaps it will become a resident in Northern Ireland, but it's not at the moment. And then rare, migrant, or extinct species, I've just listed those there as well. The comma is something we're increasingly starting to see in Northern Ireland. The small blue is super rare, but it has a single population, so we're managing that, and the brimstone as well. So those are our species that we have. Okay, so jumping straight into, we have 5 species of white butterflies in Northern Ireland, and this is what we're going to be focusing on today for the next maybe just 10 minutes, flipping through them. There's 5 species. So we've got the green veined white, the large white, and the small white on your top row there. And then on the bottom, we've got orange tip and cryptic wood white. And I'm sure you've been seeing some of these flying around in the last few weeks. So just look at the green veined white already. So I was showing you how what a really desperate year it had last year, and we're not quite sure why that's happened. We haven't done any research or haven't done too much thinking about it yet, but quite likely it's related to climate change and perhaps the wet flooded fields that we've had and the year that we've had. But anyway, it is traditionally would have been one of our most common species to see. Its flight period is from March to October. And as I'm saying there, we've said historically it is one of our commonest butterfly species, but certainly not the case last year. So where will you find it? So its habitat is really all open habitats except high ground and urbanized areas. And its food plant is cuckoo flower and other wild crucifers. So green-veined white does tend to like wet meadows, wet marshy spaces, but you will find it in other locations as well. So that photograph on the top that you see there, that's typically how you will see the butterfly at rest with its wings closed. And it's got that very characteristic, I don't know if you can see my pointer there, but those veins on the underside. And they're marked and highlighted by a sort of khaki green color, which is where it gets its green veined white from, right? That is the most diagnostic feature that you would be looking for to identify it out from the other ones. So if it's feeding and nectaring, sometimes it can be seen when its wings open. And in that instance, what you're looking for really is you're looking for these, again, outlined sort of greeny grey. Now for green veined white, you're not going to be really concerned about the number of spots or the black on the apex of the tip, right? You really, the first thing you look for when you see a white butterfly is, does it have these green veins? And if it does, that's what it is. So that's your first species. So the next one is actually one of our earliest or first sort of resident species that emerges in the springtime, and it's flying around all over the place at the moment. Well, we hope it is. And it's called the orange tip butterfly. So the orange tip butterfly, that is the male at the top actually. Not everybody knows that it's the male that has the orange tip. The female doesn't have that. So again, its flight period is from mid-April to the end of June, okay? And just to say as well, it's single brooded. And when we say that, what we mean is it just has one flight period. You will only see it from May to end of June, and that's it, done for the year. It's going through the rest of its life cycle at that stage. It is quite a common species, however, saying that you won't find it in every habitat. Its food plant is cuckoo flower or garlic mustard. So that's the plant that the female will lay her eggs on, okay? And that is a plant that really is found in damp grassland, gardens, woodland margins, and along hedgerows. So very beautiful, very pretty, quite small and very distinctive. So you will see it in both habits, actually, generally with its wings open. And what you're looking for, if it's the slide on the bottom is the female. So what you're looking for to identify it from other species is the underside. It's got this sort of, actually I don't have a photograph of the underside, but when it closes its wings, the underside is quite marbled or mottled. And you can just see it here in the bottom slide there, okay? So that's the female orange tip. So that is a diagnostic feature of orange tip. If it's a male, very distinctive, unmistakable really from all other species. But if it's a female, you need to do the check. Does it have that marbled sort of mossy effect? So if it doesn't have the veins, it has some, you can see some venation there, but it really nothing as distinctive as the green veined white. And we're seeing that on the underside. So that is your orange tip. And I guess you know as well, if you see something that you think might be orange tip in August or September, it's not, right? It's one of the other species because again, it's single brooded, okay? So that's another really nice one to rule in or rule out if you see, okay? The flight period. Okay, so now we're on to the large white. Now the large white actually, and small white, they were both species actually that we would have seen a lot more frequently in the past, but perhaps the demise of people growing vegetables and especially out west, perhaps, you know, the numbers are down to what we would have had before. But again, they are a species that are typically considered widespread. They are resident. They're multi-brooded, at least 2 broods every year. And their flight period is from April to September, okay? They like brassicas, so it's the food plant for the species. So I think many of you that maybe have allotments or like to grow your vegetables, these might be your pest species, or maybe you want to grow some nasturtium in the corner of your garden to attract them away from your cabbages. and then they'll happily lay their eggs there and continue their life cycle, and you'll get to see and enjoy them flying around. So on identification, what we like to say, right, is that while it is considered large, it's not always a very good diagnostic feature to go on the large white. It can be a smaller large white some years. And this may be down to maybe the availability of the food plant when the caterpillar is feeding, etc. So size is not really the diagnostic feature you want to be looking at for large white, and neither are the presence or absence of white spots. So what you're really looking for is, if you look at the lower picture there, you'll see the black markings on the apex of the wing. And so while you might think, okay, size, you will see that the black markings go down the wing, like go down the side. And the next side is small white. That doesn't really happen in the small white. It tends to be just on the apex, okay? So fair enough, you can think about size. It is considered to be, it can be very large sometimes, as big as a silver wash artillery perhaps, which is our largest butterfly. But really what you want to see is the apex of the wing and the sort of smudgy black to come down the wing, okay? Again, not so reliable to count the spots on the wing. And so it's present in most habitats, probably not so much peatland and upland habitats, but again, it needs the cabbage family. So that's our large white. And then our small white, you know, it can look a little similar to large white, but as I was explaining, again, it's got overlapping broods. But you can see here on the apex of the wing, it just has this sort of smattering little patch of black or grey, mottled grey on the wingtip, okay? So not extending down the edge of the wing and just located there. It's definitely smaller than large white, but again, we kind of discourage people from IDing it from the size and the number of spots, okay? It's a resident and a migrant species, and you can find it everywhere, really, except in upland areas. And again, it's the cabbage family, okay? And we'd really be keen to get records of large white and small white, because we kind of might be concerned that people are getting them mixed up, but also we're just not getting the same number of records that we used to. And again, especially out west, okay? And then finally, cryptic wood white. So this is our species that we find only really on the island of Ireland in terms of the UK. So it doesn't occur in Britain, but it does occur further afield in other parts of Europe and the continent, like France and Italy, etc. It's kind of got a complex history as to when it was discovered to be found in the country, but officially in 2011, it was agreed that cryptic wood white occurred on the island of Ireland, but not on Britain. It's a very beautiful species. It is it's actually single brooded. It's down here as bivolted, and I think, well, people are discussing whether or not it has two broods, but actually it's single brooded. So that's a slight mistake here. I think that's just to ask people to keep looking for it. We're just getting records in on our Facebook page. So it's on the wing really from early May, possibly to the end of July, and its peak flight period really is sort of mid-May to mid-June. And we're really keen to find out more about this species, and particularly out west in the other counties of Derry, Londonderry, Tyrone and Fermanagh. It's a specialist butterfly, okay? So it's specialist really because typically it just lays its eggs on meadow vetchling. And it's a really positive indicator of really nice kind of species-rich grassland that hasn't been improved or cultivated. And its habitat's a bit mixed. It likes sheltered grassy sites on the edges of woodland and scrub, but it needs to be grassland, really not woodland. So its name is a little bit deceiving, possibly. I wanted to highlight as well today that there is a Facebook group specifically dedicated to this species called the Irish Cryptic Wood White Group. So if you wanted to go onto Facebook and do a search for that group, you'll find it there. And that's hosted by Brian Nelson, actually. And it's a great little group. People are sharing observations and sightings. So we are really interested in this species. We do get eco-tourists coming over every year to Northern Ireland from Britain that don't have it. And if they want to say that they've seen all the UK species, well, they need to come to Northern Ireland to tick it off on their list. It's very beautiful. It's very pretty. It always rests with its wings closed. That's one of the diagnostic features of it. It's a little variable, but you can see here on the underside of the wing on the top slide, it's got this beautiful sort of like smoky, greeny, white, creamy, off-white coloration on the underside. But actually the biggest diagnostic feature with this is its very rounded wings, okay? Very rounded, unlike the other species that come to a more of a point, and it's also quite delicate, okay? It's quite easy to photograph in the field. It's not particularly flighty, will come to rest. So, do take your time, identify, but look for those rounded wings and look for that smoky appearance. We'd love to get more records of the species. It's sort of like one of the points of today, just to generate more records. But again, particularly in those areas out west of the band, that would be fantastic. And really the point of that would be that we'd love to know its distribution, but also so we could give better advice about, don't mow, let it grow, for example, no mow May, managing hedgerows and edges for species, just highlighting to the landowners that the species is there and the fact that the land needs to be managed sensitively. It's a great indicator species and something that we really want to ensure we continue to protect in the country. So this is a lovely map that Leah has drawn up, just looking at the records for cryptic wood white across Northern Ireland. So you can see the records from 2019 to 2021. So a big sort of preponderance of records west of the Ban. County Armagh's got some great records, County Down, County Antrim, and Fermanagh does quite well as well. Possibly there's a few good recorders, including myself as well, of course, who live here. So I'm very aware of the species. So when I'm out and about, I always record it. But we really lack records in Tyrone and Londonderry, and we do think that they're out there, and we just need people looking for them a little bit more. Saying that, the habitat out here can be quite peaty and uplandy and mountainous, so possibly not the same quality of habitat that the species need, but undoubtedly it's under-recorded. So I think that's a really useful map to see and just to motivate you, perhaps if you live in those areas or if you have friends or family that do, to get them out there looking for the species. So nearly done, just a couple more slides. So the 5 white species, what I've done in the past is actually taken away the label underneath and got people to guess, can you remember which ones are which? But I've left them in this time for the sake of recording. So that's the green veined white I was highlighting, with the underside with the veins, really well marked, super well marked. And I should say, do ignore the yellow and sort of primrose yellow color on the underside of all the species. Those are scales that easily wear off in time, so not very diagnostic to identify the species. So what you need is really to be looking for that. Again, the large white, you can see the black on the apex extends down the side of the wing. The small white, not so much so, but again, they will open their wings. You should see that. The orange tip is very diagnostic. Even if it is a female, you will see the smokiness coming through. And there's the cryptic wood white again. Very delicate, super rounded, delicate wings, just a lovely species. So I think once you get your eye in, difficult to confuse it with the other species as well. So that's it really. I should say I did take a photograph earlier, but just when you're out recording, you might have some of these things to hand, but you might be surprised to hear that actually a set of binoculars are really handy when you're going out looking at butterflies. I often have them around my neck. I have a very lightweight pair that are reverse prism and really good for looking at insects. However, even at a little bit of a distance, an ordinary set of binoculars can be really good. So some species are quite flighty, and as you approach them, they'll hear you, even if you're going really quiet, and they'll fly off and you might be frustrated. But if you get your pair of bins on them, that might be handy. We also have butterfly nets, and there's whole ranges and different suppliers that you can get them from, like Watkins and Doncaster, etc. So you could consider that, but that can be tricky. There's a bit of skill and chasing across maybe uneven ground, etc. But you could give that a go. And also I would suggest that, bring an ID guide out with you. I'm sure Leah, maybe I might ask you just to share a link to this, but this is a guide to the butterflies of Ireland. It's really, really great little guide. And it's sort of, it's available from the Dublin Naturals Field Club, actually. And it's really good to have one of these because, you know, it's just a good reference point. So bring a book, bring your camera, take a photograph, bring your phone, use iRecord, take a photograph, upload the photograph and share it there. So there's lots of little tools. We don't tend to pot up butterflies. I just wouldn't recommend it. They're easily damaged. They're too large and big. So, you know, get your eye in. And if you're unsure, don't worry, don't record it. Wait for the next time to when you are sure. Okay. So I hope you all enjoyed that. So I'll just wrap up with a couple of things here. So important. Please do download the app onto your phone and get recording on iRecord. It's something that we all use. So CEDAR support that as well. It's fantastic. And our butterfly and moth verifiers really like it as well as a platform and a way to get the data from you. Something really useful to get yourself involved with, or your friends and your family, is the big butterfly count. So this year it's running from Friday the 12th of July to Sunday the 4th of August. And you just need to spend a few minutes in any spot, actually, garden, a park, taking a walk down your local lane or roadway and recording what you see. And there's lots of resources, and that's an app you can download as well. Myself and Leah will be running a number of events over the summer. There's those additional online sessions we talked about. They're all available. If you go onto our website there, you'll find them. Leah's put them up, and they're also on our Facebook page. If any of you are thinking, well, how else can I support butterfly conservation? Membership is so important to us. It doesn't cost too much each year. It really helps us with our finance, obviously, bringing in some income, but also it shows our, I suppose, government and the people that we lobby, that people really do care about butterflies and moths. So do that if you can. If any of you are a seasoned recorder with us, then you will know all about Assemble, which is our new volunteer management platform that Butterfly Conservation are now using. I know a lot of other NGOs use it, so do sign up to Assemble and get used to using that. And then I suppose just finally, find us on social media. Our Facebook group is fantastic for sharing photographs of species that are on the wing, what's flying at the moment type thing, and always a very helpful, friendly group and open to new members. So go there. We also have a Facebook page, and that's a little different. We use that more to promote these type of events or initiatives, etc. So you can find that page as well and like and share that. I mentioned wild spaces. That's something Rosie is going to be doing a lot more work on when she returns back to us. And finally, I should say as well, we are very fortunate to have a volunteer who coordinates the UK Butterfly recording scheme with us, Stephen. So, you know, if you do end up walking a transect, or if you walk a transect, Stephen be one of your points of contact to ensure you're getting all the support you need or news about that. And finally, that's my email as well. It's orcremen@butterfly-conservation.org if you have any questions. So I hope you enjoyed that. Quick whip through the wily whites, as we sometimes call them in Northern Ireland or across the UK. They can be tricky. Please don't despair if you find it difficult to tell them apart. It does take time. Get used to how they fly, perhaps their jizz, and then if one does fly past, you'll go, oh, I've seen that before. That is a large white, or that is a small white. So that's it. I just finally want to say thank you again to our funders, and thanks to Leah as well, who's very ably set this up today. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. That was fab. I'm just going to stop.